When my husband found out I used my savings for a bank investment, he hit me in the stomach and yelled, "How dare you! I was going to use that money to buy my sister a car. Get out of my house." I picked myself up, packed my things, and left. A week later, he dropped to his knees when he saw me sitting at the CEO's desk. Then I looked at him and said, "I never thought I'd be here," staring at the cracks in our kitchen ceiling, wondering how my life had spiraled to this point. The sound of Victor's heavy footsteps pacing back and forth in our tiny living room felt like a ticking time bomb. I knew the explosion was coming. I just didn't know when. Our apartment in downtown Chicago had always felt cramped, but that night it was suffocating. The walls seemed to close in on me as I stirred the spaghetti sauce, trying to focus on anything but the impending confrontation. Garlic and basil filled the air, but they did nothing to calm my nerves. Victor and I had been married for 10 years, but lately it felt like we were strangers sharing the same space. We'd met in college, both bright-eyed and full of dreams. He was studying business. I was majoring in economics. We bonded over numbers and ambitious plans for the future. Back then, I honestly thought we were unstoppable together. But life has a way of wearing you down, doesn't it? After graduation, reality hit us hard. The job market was brutal, and we both ended up in positions far from our dream careers. Victor grew increasingly frustrated, watching his college buddies climb the corporate ladder while he was stuck in a dead-end job at a local bank. I tried to stay positive, working as an accountant for a small firm, always looking for opportunities to grow. As the years passed, the distance between us grew. Our conversations became shorter, our dreams smaller. The passion that once fueled our relationship had fizzled out, replaced by a silent resentment neither of us wanted to acknowledge. But I refused to give up. I spent my evenings studying the stock market, devouring financial blogs, watching investment tutorials online. I was determined to find a way to improve our situation, to reignite the spark we once had. That's when I stumbled upon a promising stock. It was a small tech company developing innovative software for the healthcare industry. Everything about it screamed potential. I spent weeks analyzing their financials, reading about their management team, following industry trends. I was convinced this could be our ticket to a better life. So I made a decision. I invested our modest savings, $5,000 that we had been setting aside for years, into the stock. I knew it was a risk, but I believed in it with every fiber of my being. I had planned to tell Victor about it tonight, hoping he would understand and share my excitement. But as I heard him slam the front door earlier that evening, I knew something was terribly wrong. He stormed into the kitchen, his face a mask of fury. Before I could even greet him, he started yelling about his sister needing money for a car. My stomach dropped. I realized the terrible timing of my investment. "Victor, please let me explain," I pleaded, turning off the stove and facing him. "I found this incredible investment opportunity." "Investment," he spat, the word like poison. "You mean you gambled away our savings without even telling me?" I tried to keep my voice calm, despite the fear rising in my chest. "It's not gambling, Victor. I've done extensive research. This company has amazing potential if we just give it some time." "Time?" He laughed bitterly. "We don't have time, Clara. My sister needs that money now. How could you be so selfish?" His words stung, but I stood my ground. "I'm not being selfish. I'm trying to secure our future. If this pays off, we could finally afford to buy a house, maybe even start a family." Victor's eyes narrowed dangerously. "A family? You think I want to start a family with someone I can't even trust?" Each word felt like a knife twisting in my heart. "You can trust me, Victor. I've always had our best interests at heart. Remember when we first met? We talked about taking risks, about building something great together." "That was a long time ago," he said, his voice cold. "We were naive kids back then. This is the real world, Clara, and in the real world, you don't throw away your family's money on some pipe dream." I could feel tears welling up, but I blinked them back. I wouldn't let him see me cry. "It's not a pipe dream. If you just listen to me, I could show you the research I've done. This company, I don't want to hear about your damn company." Victor roared, slamming his fist on the kitchen counter. The sound made me jump, and I instinctively took a step back. In that moment, I saw something change in Victor's eyes. The anger was replaced by something darker, something I had never seen before. It terrified me. "Victor," I said softly, trying to diffuse the situation. "I know you're upset, but we can figure this out together. We've always been a team, remember?" But my words seemed to fall on deaf ears. Victor was pacing again, running his hands through his hair in frustration. "A team," he scoffed. "A team doesn't make unilateral decisions about their shared finances." I took a deep breath, trying one last time to reason with him. "I know I should have talked to you first. That was my mistake and I'm sorry. But please, just give this a chance. If it doesn't work out, I'll take full responsibility. I'll get a second job if I have to pay back your sister. For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of the old Victor, the man I fell in love with, in his eyes. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. How dare you spend that money, you witch? He spat, his voice echoing through our small apartment. The venom in his words made me flinch. It's not just your money. I was saving that for my sister's car. I opened my mouth to respond, to try one last time to explain, but I never got the chance. Before I could react, Victor's fist struck me squarely in the stomach. The pain was immediate and intense, knocking the wind out of me. I gasped and stumbled backward, my hip hitting the kitchen counter hard. As I struggled to breathe, clutching my stomach, I looked up at Victor in disbelief. This couldn't be happening. The man I had loved for over a decade, the man I had built my life with, had just hit me. The physical pain was nothing compared to the agony of betrayal that washed over me. Victor seemed shocked by his own actions for a split second, but then his face hardened again. He turned his back on me, his parting words cutting deeper than the blow. Get your things and leave. I've had enough of you. I slid down to the cold kitchen floor, tears streaming down my face. The spaghetti sauce on the stove had started to burn, filling the air with an acrid smell that matched the bitterness in my heart. As I sat there, trying to process what had just happened, I realized that this moment marked the end of everything I had known for the past 10 years. The dreams we had shared, the life we had built together, it all came crashing down in an instant. The man I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize, someone capable of hurting me not just with words, but with his fists. As the shock began to wear off, a strange sense of clarity washed over me. I knew with absolute certainty that I couldn't stay here anymore. This wasn't a fight we could come back from, a problem we could solve with apologies and promises to do better. This was the end. With shaking hands, I pulled myself up from the floor. My stomach throbbed where Victor had hit me, a physical reminder of how our relationship had deteriorated. I looked around the kitchen, at the half-cooked dinner, the unwashed dishes in the sink, the faded curtains we had picked out together years ago, and felt a profound sense of loss. But beneath the pain and the fear, I felt something else stirring, a tiny spark of defiance, of determination. Victor might have told me to leave, but I realized that this was my choice now. I was choosing to walk away from a situation that had become toxic, even dangerous. As I moved towards our bedroom to pack my things, I caught a glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror. My eyes were red and puffy from crying, my hair a mess. But there was something different in my expression, a strength I hadn't seen in years. I may have lost my husband, my home, and my sense of security in one terrible evening. But as I began to gather my belongings, I made a silent promise to myself. This would not be the end of my story. It would be a new beginning. I don't know how long I lay on that cold kitchen floor, my tears pooling beneath me as the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. Victor's words echoed in my mind. Get your things and leave. I've had enough of you. The finality of those words, coupled with the lingering pain in my stomach where he had struck me, finally propelled me into action. With shaky legs, I pulled myself up, using the kitchen counter for support. The apartment was eerily quiet now, save for the ticking of the old clock on the wall, a wedding gift from Victor's parents. Each tick felt like a countdown, urging me to leave before things got worse. I made my way to our bedroom, his bedroom now, and pulled out the battered suitcase from the top of the closet. It was the same suitcase we had used on our honeymoon to Niagara Falls, a trip filled with laughter and promises of a bright future. Now, it would carry the remnants of my shattered marriage. As I began to pack, every item I touched brought a flood of memories. The soft blue sweater Victor had given me for my birthday 3 years ago. I remembered how his eyes had lit up when I opened the gift. I folded it carefully and placed it in the suitcase, my hands lingering on the fabric. Would I ever be able to wear it again without thinking of him? Next came my work clothes, sensible blouses, and slacks that I wore to my accounting job. I packed them mechanically, my mind drifting to the investment I had made. Despite everything that had happened, I still believed in that stock. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the future I had envisioned for us, a future that now seemed impossibly out of reach. As I moved around the room, gathering my belongings, I caught sight of our wedding photo on the dresser. We looked so young, so happy. Victor's arm was around my waist, and we were both grinning at the camera, our whole lives ahead of us. I picked up the frame, my finger tracing the outline of our faces. For a moment, I was tempted to pack it, to hold on to this piece of our happier days. But then I remembered the look in Victor's eyes as he hit me, and I set the photo face down on the dresser. Some memories were better left behind. I moved to the bathroom, gathering my toiletries. The familiar scent of my shampoo hit me, and suddenly I was overwhelmed by the normalcy of it all. Just this morning, I had stood in this very spot, getting ready for work, completely unaware that my life was about to fall apart. I choked back a sob as I tossed my toothbrush and face wash into a small bag. Back in the bedroom, I opened my jewelry box. Most of the pieces inside were gifts from Victor over the years. Birthdays, anniversaries, apologies after arguments. I hesitated, unsure if I should take them. They were mine, but they felt tainted now. In the end, I took only the simple silver necklace my grandmother had given me before she passed away. Everything else I left behind. As I zipped up the suitcase, I realized how little I was actually taking with me. 10 years of marriage reduced to a single suitcase and a bag of toiletries. It seemed impossible that my life could be packed away so easily. I glanced at the clock. Barely an hour had passed since the fight in the kitchen. Victor hadn't come to check on me, hadn't tried to apologize or stop me from leaving. The silence from his end of the apartment was deafening. With my bags packed, I took one last look around the room. My eyes fell on the bookshelf in the corner. Among the various novels and textbooks was a small, leather-bound journal. My dream journal. I'd started it in college, jotting down my hopes and plans for the future. Over the years, I had continued to add to it, even as those dreams seemed to slip further and further away. I walked over and pulled the journal from the shelf. Flipping through the pages, I saw entries about starting our own business, traveling the world, having children, dreams that Victor and I had once shared but had somehow lost along the way. I clutched the journal to my chest and slipped it into my bag. If nothing else, I would hold on to my dreams. As I wheeled my suitcase into the hallway, I was struck by how bright it seemed. The overhead light that had been flickering for months, a job Victor had promised to fix but never got around to, now shone steadily, illuminating the path to the front door. It felt like a sign, guiding me towards a new chapter of my life. I paused at the kitchen doorway, looking at the mess from our interrupted dinner. The burnt smell of the forgotten spaghetti sauce still hung in the air. For a moment, I considered cleaning up, a force of habit, I suppose, but then I stopped myself. This wasn't my responsibility anymore. As I reached for the front door handle, I heard movement from the living room. Victor appeared in the doorway, his face a mask of indifference. We stared at each other for what felt like an eternity. I searched his eyes for any sign of remorse, any indication that he wanted me to stay, but all I saw was cold detachment. "I'm leaving," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. "I don't know where I'm going, but I know I can't stay here." Victor nodded, his expression unchanged. "That's probably for the best," he replied, his tone flat. I waited for more, an apology, a plea for me to stay, anything. But nothing came. The silence stretched between us, filled with all the things we should have said to each other years ago. Finally, I turned away. "Goodbye, Victor," I said softly, opening the door. As I stepped into the hallway, dragging my suitcase behind me, I felt a strange mixture of emotions wash over me. There was fear, of course, fear of the unknown, of what lay ahead. But there was also an unexpected sense of relief, even excitement. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. The elevator ride down to the lobby was surreal. As I watched the floor numbers tick down, I thought about all the times I had taken this same ride, going to work, coming home, always to the same routine, the same arguments, the same disappointments. But not anymore. When these doors opened, I would be stepping into a new life. Outside, the Chicago night air was crisp and cool against my tear-stained cheeks. The city lights twinkled around me, a stark contrast to the darkness I felt inside. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, my suitcase at my feet, suddenly overwhelmed by the enormity of what lay ahead. Where would I go? What would I do? I had some money saved in my personal account, but it wouldn't last long. I needed a plan. As I pondered my next move, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from my friend Sarah. "Hey girl, we still on for brunch this weekend?" I stared at the message, a lifeline in the chaos of my thoughts. Sarah, of course. She had been my best friend since college, always there for me through thick and thin. Before I could talk myself out of it, I hit the call button. "Clara." Sarah's cheerful voice answered. "What's up? Isn't it a bit late for a call?" I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Sarah, I need a place to stay, just for a few days. Something happened with Victor, and I couldn't finish the sentence, but I didn't need to. Sarah's tone immediately changed. "Oh, honey, come over right now. I'm sending you my address. Stay as long as you need, okay?" Relief washed over me. "Thank you," I whispered, unable to say more. As I hailed a cab to take me to Sarah's place, I looked back at the apartment building one last time. Somewhere up there, Victor was probably sitting in the dark, maybe even regretting his actions. But I couldn't think about that now. I had to focus on moving forward. The cab pulled up, and I loaded my suitcase into the trunk. As I settled into the back seat and gave the driver Sarah's address, I felt a strange sense of calm come over me. Yes, my marriage had ended. Yes, I was leaving behind the life I had known for the past decade. But I was also leaving behind the fear, the disappointment, and the slow erosion of my self-worth. As the cab pulled away from the curb, taking me towards an uncertain future, I made a silent promise to myself. No matter what happened next, I would never again let anyone make me feel small. I would rebuild my life, piece by piece if I had to, and I would make it better than before. The city lights blurred as we drove, and I felt a tear roll down my cheek. But this time, it wasn't a tear of sadness or fear. It was a tear of determination. My story wasn't over. It was just beginning. The first few days at Sarah's place passed in a blur. I spent most of my time curled up on her lumpy couch, staring blankly at the TV or out the window, replaying that fateful night over and over in my mind. Sarah, bless her heart, did her best to comfort me. She brought me tea, ordered my favorite takeout, and didn't push me to talk until I was ready. It was on the third day when I finally broke down and told her everything. We sat at her tiny kitchen table, mugs of coffee growing cold between us, as I poured out the whole story. The investment, the fight, the hit that changed everything. "Oh, Clara," Sarah whispered, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "I'm so sorry you went through that, but I'm proud of you for leaving. You did the right thing." Her words were like a balm to my battered spirit. For the first time since that night, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could get through this. As the days turned into a week, I slowly began to emerge from my fog of grief and shock. I knew I couldn't stay on Sarah's couch forever. I needed to figure out my next steps. But every time I thought about job hunting or apartment searching, I felt overwhelmed. How could I start over from scratch at 32? It was during one of these moments of despair that my phone pinged with a notification. Absently, I checked it, expecting another worried message from a coworker or friend. Instead, it was an alert from my investment app. My heart raced as I opened it, remembering the stock that had caused so much trouble. To my shock, the value had doubled overnight. The small tech company I had invested in had just announced a major partnership with a leading healthcare provider. Their stock was soaring. "Sarah," I called out, my voice shaky with disbelief. "Sarah, you won't believe this." She rushed in from the other room, concern etched on her face. "What is it? What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," I said, a laugh bubbling up in my throat. "Everything's right. The investment, it paid off. It actually paid off." We huddled over my phone, watching in amazement as the numbers kept climbing. By the end of the day, my initial $5,000 investment had turned into $15,000. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough. Enough for a fresh start. That night, as I lay on the couch staring at the ceiling, I made a decision. This windfall wasn't just about the money, it was a sign. A sign that I could trust my instincts, that I had value beyond being someone's wife. It was time to take control of my life. The next morning, I woke up early, filled with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. I brewed a pot of coffee and set up my laptop at Sarah's kitchen table. It was time to put my economics degree to good use. I spent hours researching, reading financial blogs, watching investment tutorials, and analyzing market trends. I didn't just want to understand what had happened with my lucky investment. I wanted to learn how to replicate that success. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah's kitchen table became my command center. I created spreadsheets, studied company reports, and even started a small blog documenting my learning journey. At night, when Sarah came home from her job at the local newspaper, I'd excitedly share my newfound knowledge with her. "You know," she said one evening as I explained the intricacies of dividend investing, "I've never seen you this passionate about anything before, not even back in college." Her words stopped me short. She was right. Somewhere along the way, in the midst of my crumbling marriage and dead-end job, I'd lost my passion. But now it was back with a vengeance. As my knowledge grew, so did my confidence. I started making small, calculated investments with the money I'd earned. Some paid off, some didn't, but each one taught me something new. I learned to trust my instincts while also doing thorough research. I learned to be patient, to think long-term rather than chasing quick gains. About a month after I'd moved in with Sarah, I decided it was time to find my own place. My investments were doing well enough that I could afford a small studio apartment. It wasn't much, just a tiny kitchenette, a bathroom, and a main room that served as both bedroom and living area, but it was mine. The day I moved in, hanging up my clothes in the cramped closet and arranging my few possessions, I felt a sense of pride I hadn't experienced in years. That night, As I sat on my secondhand couch, eating takeout and looking out at the Chicago skyline, I pulled out my old dream journal. I flipped through the pages, past all the dreams I'd shared with Victor, until I came to a blank page. There, I wrote a new entry. Dream, to become financially independent, to help other women take control of their financial futures. It was a big dream, maybe even an impossible one, but for the first time in a long time, I felt capable of chasing it. The next few months were a whirlwind of learning and growth. I kept my day job as an accountant, but every spare moment was dedicated to expanding my financial knowledge. I took online courses in investment strategies and financial planning. I attended local meetups for aspiring entrepreneurs, soaking up their experiences and advice. One day, as I was leaving one of these meetups, a woman approached me. She introduced herself as Diane, a talent scout for a prestigious financial firm. "I couldn't help but notice your questions during the Q&A," she said. "You seem to have a real knack for this stuff. Have you ever considered a career in finance?" I was taken aback. Me? A career in finance? But as I thought about it, I realized that's exactly what I'd been working towards all these months. Diane gave me her card and invited me to interview for a junior analyst position at her firm. The old me would have hesitated, would have doubted whether I was qualified. But I wasn't that person anymore. The interview process was grueling, multiple rounds of interviews, case studies, financial analyses. But with each challenge, I felt more alive. This was what I was meant to do. When the job offer came, I couldn't believe it. The salary was double what I'd been making as an accountant, with the potential for significant bonuses based on performance. It was more money than I'd ever earned in my life. As I sat in my tiny studio, staring at the offer letter, I couldn't help but think back to that night in the kitchen with Victor. He had called me a witch for investing our savings. Now, that very decision had led me to a new career, a new life. I called Sarah to share the news. As we celebrated over the phone, she said something that stuck with me. "Clara, do you realize what you've done? In just a few months, you've completely turned your life around. You're like a phoenix rising from the ashes." A phoenix rising from the ashes. I liked that image. From the ashes of my failed marriage and shattered self-esteem, I had found my true calling. I discovered a strength I never knew I possessed. As I prepared for my first day at the new job, I looked at myself in the mirror. Gone was the timid, unsure woman who had left Victor's apartment that night. In her place stood someone confident, someone who knew her worth. I smoothed down my new blazer, a small splurge to celebrate my new job, and smiled at my reflection. "You've got this," I told myself, and for the first time in a long time, I truly believed it. Walking into the sleek office building on my first day, I felt a mix of nervousness and excitement. This was more than just a new job. It was the beginning of a new chapter in my life, a chapter where I was the author, where I called the shots. As I rode the elevator up to my new office, I made a silent promise to myself. No matter where this journey took me, I would never forget the lessons I'd learned. I would use my experiences, both good and bad, to fuel my success. And someday, when I was in a position to do so, I would find a way to help other women discover their own strength, just as I had discovered mine. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped out into my future, ready for whatever challenges lay ahead, ready to rise. 1 year. It's amazing how much can change in just 1 year. As I stood in front of the full-length mirror in my new apartment, adjusting my crisp white blouse and smoothing down my tailored navy suit, I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. Gone was the timid, self-doubting Clara who had fled her marriage with nothing but a suitcase and a broken heart. In her place stood a woman exuding confidence, power, and purpose. The past year had been a whirlwind of challenges and triumphs. My job as a junior analyst had been just the beginning. I threw myself into the work with a passion that surprised even me. Late nights poring over financial reports, early mornings analyzing market trends. I loved every minute of it. My colleagues quickly took notice of my dedication and insight. I still remember the day my boss called me into his office. I was nervous, wondering if I had made some terrible mistake. Instead, he smiled and said, "Clara, I've never seen anyone pick up this business as quickly as you have. How would you feel about heading up our new fintech division?" The promotion came with a significant pay raise and a level of responsibility that would have terrified me just a year ago. But I was ready for it. More than ready. I was hungry for it. Under my leadership, the fintech division flourished. We developed innovative financial products that caught the attention of some major players in the industry. Our success didn't go unnoticed. Soon, I was being headhunted by other firms, offered positions I never dreamed I'd be qualified for. But it was the call from Jenna Reeves, CEO of TechFin Innovations, that changed everything. TechFin was an up-and-coming company making waves in the financial technology sector. They were looking for a new CEO, someone with both financial acumen and a fresh perspective on technology. Someone, Jenna said, exactly like me. The interview process was intense. I spent weeks preparing, researching the company, and developing a comprehensive strategy for their future growth. When I walked into the boardroom to present to the company's executives and major shareholders, I felt a familiar flutter of nerves in my stomach. But as soon as I started speaking, laying out my vision for the company's future, the nerves disappeared. This was where I belonged. 2 days later, I received the offer. Chief Executive Officer of TechFin Innovations. The salary made me dizzy just looking at it, not to mention the stock options and other perks. But it wasn't about the money. It was about the opportunity to lead, to shape the future of an entire company. As I accepted the position, I couldn't help but think back to that night in the kitchen with Victor, when he had sneered at my investment and called me a witch. If only he could see me now. My first few months as CEO were a steep learning curve. I had to quickly get up to speed on every aspect of the company's operations, from our tech development to our marketing strategies. I worked long hours, often arriving at the office before sunrise and leaving well after dark. But I loved every minute of it. I assembled a strong team around me, people who shared my vision and drive. Together, we started to implement changes, streamlining our operations and pushing for more innovative products. It wasn't always easy. There were setbacks and challenges along the way. But with each obstacle we overcame, my confidence grew. One of my proudest moments came when we launched a new app designed to help low-income individuals better manage their finances. It was a project close to my heart, inspired by my own experiences of financial struggle. The app was a huge success, earning us positive press, and more importantly, helping thousands of people take control of their financial futures. As our company grew, so did my public profile. I started being invited to speak at conferences, to give interviews for financial magazines. At first, the attention made me uncomfortable. I was used to working behind the scenes, not being in the spotlight. But I soon realized that this platform gave me the opportunity to inspire others, particularly women, to pursue careers in finance and technology. I thought often of the promise I had made to myself when I first started this journey, to help other women discover their own strength. Now, I was in a position to do just that. I started a mentorship program within our company specifically aimed at helping women advance in the tech and finance sectors. Seeing these women grow and succeed became one of the most rewarding aspects of my job. It wasn't all smooth sailing. Of course, there were still nights when I lay awake doubting myself, wondering if I was really cut out for this level of responsibility. The imposter syndrome never fully went away, but I had learned to push through those doubts, to trust in my abilities and the decisions that had led me to this point. My personal life had taken a backseat during this time of intense professional growth. Dating seemed like a luxury I couldn't afford, both in terms of time and emotional energy. But I wasn't lonely. I had formed close friendships with several of my colleagues, and Sarah remained my rock, always there to celebrate my successes or offer a sympathetic ear when I needed to vent. On this particular morning, as I finished getting ready for work, I felt a sense of calm confidence. It was going to be a big day. We were meeting with representatives from a smaller tech company that was hoping to partner with us on a new project. If the deal went through, it could open up exciting new avenues for both our companies. As I drove to the office, I mentally reviewed the key points I wanted to discuss in the meeting. I was so focused on my thoughts that I almost missed the turn into the parking garage. Chuckling at myself, I parked the car and headed into the building. The receptionist greeted me with a warm smile. "Good morning, Miss Walker. The representatives from Bytech are already here. Your assistant has shown them to the main conference room." I thanked her and headed to my office to grab my tablet and a few documents. As I walked, I scrolled through my emails, making sure there were no last-minute issues I needed to address before the meeting. My assistant, Jake, was waiting for me outside the conference room. "Everything set up, Clara," he said, handing me a steaming cup of coffee, black, just the way I liked it. "Do you need me to sit in on the meeting?" I shook my head. "No, I think I can handle this one. But stay close in case I need any additional information, okay?" Jake nodded and retreated to his desk. As I pushed open the door to the conference room, I put on my most welcoming smile. I entered, ready to greet our potential new partners. "Good morning, everyone. I'm Clara Walker, CEO of TechFin Innovations. I'm excited to discuss the possibilities of our future partnership." My voice trailed off as my eyes landed on a familiar face among the Bytech representatives. Sitting there, looking smaller and more uncertain than I had ever seen him, was Victor. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. I felt a rush of emotions, shock, anger, a twinge of that old hurt. but they passed quickly, replaced by a strange sense of calm. Victor's knees literally buckled when he recognized me, his face a mask of disbelief as he realized where we each stood now. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. This was my boardroom, my company, my moment. I wouldn't let the ghosts of my past derail this meeting or shake my confidence. As I was saying, I continued, my voice strong and clear. I'm excited to discuss the possibilities of our future partnership. Shall we begin? I took my seat at the head of the table, feeling the weight of everyone's eyes on me. Victor was still staring, his mouth slightly agape. The other biotech representatives looked confused, clearly sensing the tension but not understanding its source. For the next hour, I led the meeting with a professionalism that would have been impossible for the old Clara. I outlined our proposal, answered questions, and steered the discussion towards a mutually beneficial agreement. All the while, I could feel Victor's eyes on me, a mixture of awe and regret in his gaze. As the meeting drew to a close, I stood up to shake hands with the biotech team. When I reached Victor, our eyes met. In that moment, I saw a flicker of the man I had once loved, humbled, perhaps a little broken. But I also saw something else, recognition. Recognition of the strong, capable woman I had become. Thank you all for coming, I said, addressing the room but holding Victor's gaze. We'll be in touch with our final decision soon. As the biotech team filed out, Victor lingered behind. I could see he wanted to say something, to perhaps apologize or explain. But this wasn't the time or place for that conversation. It was good to see you, Victor, I said, my tone polite but firm. I hope you have a safe trip back. With that, I turned and walked out of the conference room, my heels clicking confidently on the polished floor. As I headed back to my office, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying. I had faced my past and emerged stronger. I had shown Victor, and more importantly myself, just how far I had come. Whatever happened with the biotech deal, I knew one thing for certain. I was exactly where I was meant to be, doing exactly what I was meant to do. The day wasn't over yet, and there was still work to be done. But as I sat down at my desk, I allowed myself a moment to appreciate the journey that had brought me here. From the ashes of my old life, I had built something beautiful and powerful, and this was just the beginning. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings, phone calls, and endless emails. But through it all, my mind kept drifting back to that moment in a conference room when I first saw Victor. The shock in his eyes, the way his knees had almost given out. It was an image I couldn't shake. As the office slowly emptied and the sky outside my window turned a deep indigo, I found myself alone with my thoughts. I should have been reviewing the proposal from biotech, weighing the pros and cons of the potential partnership. Instead, I was replaying every moment of that brief encounter with my ex-husband. A soft knock on my office door jolted me from my reverie. It was Jake, my assistant, looking concerned. Clara, sorry to bother you, but there's someone here to see you, he said, his voice hesitant. He says his name is Victor and that it's important. My heart skipped a beat. Part of me wanted to tell Jake to send him away, to maintain the professional distance I'd kept during our meeting. But another part, a part one thought I'd long since buried, was curious. What could Victor possibly have to say after all this time? It's okay, Jake, I heard myself say. Send him in. As Jake left, I stood up and moved to the front of my desk, leaning against it slightly. I wanted to face Victor on my feet, not sitting behind the symbol of my new position and power. This wasn't about CEO Clara facing a business associate. This was about Clara the woman, facing the man who had once been her husband. When Victor walked in, he looked nothing like the confident businessman from this morning's meeting. His tie was loosened, his hair slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. He stopped a few feet away from me, his eyes roaming over my face as if he was seeing me for the first time. Clara, he began, his voice trembling, full of an emotion I couldn't quite place. I didn't know. I didn't realize. I raised a hand, silencing him. My voice was steady, sharp when I spoke. You didn't know what, Victor? That I was more than the quiet little wife you thought you owned? That I could accomplish more without you holding me back? He flinched at my words, and for a moment I saw a flicker of the old Victor, the man who had swept me off my feet in college, who had promised me the world. But that man was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. I'm sorry, he said, the words seemingly dragged from deep within him. I know it doesn't change anything, but I am so sorry for what I did to you. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're right. It doesn't change anything. Victor took a step closer, his hands outstretched in a pleading gesture. Clara, please. When I saw you in that conference room, looking so confident, so powerful, I realized what a fool I'd been, what I'd thrown away. I could feel my carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble. The hurt, the anger, the betrayal, emotions I thought I'd dealt with long ago, came rushing back. Do you have any idea what you did to me, Victor? Do you know how long it took me to rebuild my life after you shattered it? He nodded, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. I do now. Seeing you today, hearing about your success, it made me realize how much I destroyed. Not just our marriage, but your trust, your self-esteem. I turned away from him, walking to the window. The city lights twinkled below, reminding me of that night I'd left our apartment, unsure of my future. Why are you here, Victor? What do you want from me? I heard him take a deep breath. I want a chance to make things right. To show you how much I've changed, how sorry I am for everything I did. I spun around, anger flaring in my chest. You think this is a chance for redemption? It's not. You threw me away, and now you have to live with that. Victor's shoulders slumped, defeat written across his face. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But seeing you today, realizing what I lost, I couldn't walk away without at least trying to apologize. For a long moment, we stood in silence. I studied Victor's face, trying to reconcile the man before me with the one who had struck me that fateful night. He looked older, wearier. There was a sadness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Finally, I spoke, my voice softer but no less firm. Victor, I appreciate your apology, but you're right. You don't deserve my forgiveness. What you did, it can't be undone with a simple "I'm sorry." He nodded, accepting my words. I understand. I needed you to know how much I regret what I did, how proud I am of what you've accomplished. I felt a strange mix of emotions wash over me. Anger, sadness, and, unexpectedly, pity. The man standing before me was a shadow of the Victor I'd once loved. In that moment, I realized that while I had risen from the ashes of our failed marriage, he had been consumed by them. Thank you for saying that, I said, surprised to find that I meant it. But Victor, you need to understand something. My success, my happiness, they're not in spite of what you did. They're because of it. His brow furrowed in confusion, and I continued. That night, when you hit me and told me to leave, it was the wake-up call I needed. It made me realize that I had been living my life for you, dimming my own light to make you shine brighter. When you threw me away, you forced me to find my own path. Victor's eyes widened as the weight of my words sank in. Clara, but I wasn't finished. I'm not telling you this to make you feel better, Victor. I'm telling you because I want you to understand that redemption isn't something I can give you. It's something you have to find for yourself. He nodded slowly, a mix of understanding and regret crossing his face. You're right. I see that now. I wish things could have been different. So do I admitted. But they're not. And now we both have to live with the choices we've made. We stood in silence for a moment, the weight of our shared history hanging between us. Finally, Victor spoke. What happens now with Bytech, I mean? I straightened, shifting back into my role as CEO. That depends on whether the partnership makes sense for TechFin. I won't let our personal history influence a business decision, Victor. I hope you can do the same. He nodded, a flicker of respect crossing his face. Of course. I should go. Thank you for hearing me out, Clara. As he turned to leave, I called out, Victor! He paused, looking back at me. I hope you find what you're looking for. I really do. A sad smile crossed his face. Thank you, Clara, and congratulations on everything. With that, he was gone, leaving me alone in my office once more. I sank into my chair, emotionally drained. Seeing Victor confronting our past, it had stirred up feelings I thought I'd long since put to rest. But as I sat there, watching the city lights twinkle outside my window, I realized something important. The encounter hadn't shaken me as it might have once done. Instead, it had reaffirmed just how far I'd come. I pulled out my phone and dialed a familiar number. Sarah, are you free for a late dinner? I've had quite a day, and I could use a friend. An hour later, I was sitting across from Sarah in our favorite little Italian restaurant, recounting the day's events over a glass of wine. As I finished my story, Sarah reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Clara, I'm so proud of you, she said, her eyes shining. The way you handled Victor, both in the meeting and after, you've come so far from that night on my couch. I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me that had nothing to do with the wine. You know, seeing Victor today made me realize something. For so long, I was angry at him for what he did, but now I'm almost grateful. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Grateful? I nodded. If he hadn't done what he did, I might never have found the strength to become who I am now. I might have stayed in that unhappy marriage, always wondering what I could have been. As we finished our meal and said our goodbyes, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The encounter with Victor hadn't been easy, but it had been necessary. It had allowed me to close a chapter of my life that had been left unfinished. Walking back to my car, I pulled out my phone and opened my investment app. The stock that had started this whole journey, the one Victor had called me a witch for investing in, was still in my portfolio. It had grown exponentially over the past year, a constant reminder of the moment my life had changed. For a moment, I considered selling it. It felt like the final step in letting go of my past. But then I smiled and put my phone away. That stock wasn't just a reminder of what I'd lost. It was a symbol of what I'd gained, my independence, my confidence, my new life. As I drove home, I felt lighter than I had in years. Victor's unexpected appearance had stirred up old memories, but it had also shown me just how much I'd grown. I was no longer the woman who needed his approval or feared his anger. I was Clara Walker, CEO, survivor, and architect of my own destiny. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Decisions about the biotech partnership, strategies for Techfin's growth, and the constant juggling act of leadership. But for tonight, I was content. I had faced my past and emerged stronger. Whatever the future held, I knew I was ready for it. As I pulled into my driveway, I made a mental note to call my mentor from the financial firm tomorrow. It was time to expand our women's leadership program. After all, redemption might not be free, but empowerment, that was something I could give freely, helping other women find their own paths to success and happiness. With that thought, I stepped into my home, ready for whatever tomorrow might bring. The weeks following my encounter with Victor were a whirlwind of activity. I threw myself into work with renewed vigor, determined to use the energy from our confrontation as fuel for positive change. The biotech partnership was thoroughly evaluated, and despite my personal history with Victor, I made sure a decision was based solely on business merits. In the end, we decided to move forward with a modified version of the partnership. It was the right choice for Techfin, and I was proud of my team's ability to separate personal feelings from professional decisions. When I called Victor to inform him of our decision, his voice was filled with a mixture of relief and respect. "Thank you, Clara," he said. "I promise you won't regret this decision." "I'm sure I won't," I replied, keeping my tone professional. "This partnership has the potential to benefit both our companies greatly. Let's make the most of it." As I hung up the phone, I felt a sense of closure. Victor was now just another business associate, our personal history filed away in the past where it belonged. With that chapter truly closed, I turned my attention to the future. The women's leadership program I had started at Techfin was gaining traction, and I decided it was time to take it to the next level. I reached out to my old mentor, Diane, who had first given me a chance in the finance world. "Clara, darling." Diane's warm voice filled the line. "I was wondering when you'd call. I've been following your progress. You're making waves in the industry, girl." I laughed, feeling a rush of affection for the woman who had believed in me when I was just starting out. "Thanks, Diane. Actually, that's kind of why I'm calling. I've got an idea I want to run by you." Over the next hour, Diane and I hashed out plans for an industry-wide mentorship program for women in finance and tech. The idea was to pair established leaders like ourselves with up-and-coming talent, providing guidance, support, and opportunities for growth. "It's brilliant, Clara," Diane said when I finished outlining the plan. "Count me in, and I know at least a dozen other women who would jump at the chance to be involved." The next few months were a blur of planning meetings, late-night strategy sessions, and countless cups of coffee. We called our initiative Breaking Chains, a nod to breaking the chains of limitations often placed on women in our industry. The launch event for Breaking Chains was held on a crisp autumn evening. As I stood at the podium, looking out at a sea of faces, some familiar, many new, I felt a surge of emotion. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice steady and clear, "we're here tonight because we believe in the power of potential. We believe that talent knows no gender, that innovation knows no boundaries. Breaking Chains is more than just a mentorship program, it's a movement." As I spoke about my own journey, from a woman who doubted her own worth to the CEO of a thriving company, I saw heads nodding, eyes shining with recognition and hope. I didn't shy away from the darker parts of my story, including my experience with domestic violence. It wasn't easy to share, but I knew it was important. "I stand before you today, not despite my past, but because of it," I said, my voice growing stronger. "Every obstacle, every setback, every moment of doubt, they all led me here. And now, it's our turn to lift others up, to be the mentors we wished we had when we were starting out." The response was overwhelming. By the end of the night, we had more mentors and men signed up than we had initially hoped for. As I mingled with the crowd, shaking hands and exchanging contact information, I felt a sense of purpose stronger than ever before. One young woman, barely out of college, approached me with tears in her eyes. "Miss Walker," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Your story, it's so similar to mine. I was starting to think I didn't belong in this industry, but hearing you speak tonight, it's given me hope." I squeezed her hand, remembering how I had felt at her age. "What's your name?" "Zoe," she replied. "Well, Zoe, let me tell you something," I said, looking her in the eye. "You absolutely belong here, and I'm going to make sure you have every opportunity to prove it." As the event wound down, Sarah found me by the bar, grinning from ear to ear. "Clara Walker," she said, pulling me into a hug. "Look at you, changing the world one mentorship at a time." I laughed, feeling a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. I don't know about changing the world, but if we can change even a few lives, it'll be worth it. In the months that followed, Breaking Chains grew beyond our wildest expectations. We partnered with universities, offering internships and scholarships to promising female students. We organized workshops and conferences, bringing together women from all levels of the industry to share knowledge and experiences. The impact was tangible. I started receiving emails and letters from women across the country, sharing their stories of how the program had helped them gain confidence, secure promotions, or even start their own companies. One afternoon, as I was reviewing some proposals in my office, Jake knocked on my door. "Clara, there's someone here to see you. She says she's an old friend." Curious, I told him to send her in. To my surprise, it was Diane. "Surprise," she said, sweeping into the room with her usual flair. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd drop by to see the woman of the hour. I stood to greet her, genuinely happy to see my old mentor. "Diane, this is unexpected. What brings you to Chicago?" She settled into the chair across from my desk, her eyes twinkling. "Oh, a little business, a little pleasure. But mostly I wanted to see you in action, CEO Walker." We spent the next hour catching up, discussing the progress of Breaking Chains and the latest industry trends. As our conversation drew to a close, Diane's expression grew serious. "Clara," she said, leaning forward, "I want you to know how proud I am of you. When I first met you, I saw potential. But what you've accomplished, what you're doing for other women, it's beyond anything I could have imagined." I felt a lump form in my throat. "Thank you, Diane. I couldn't have done it without your guidance." She waved off my words. "Nonsense. You had it in you all along. I just gave you a little push in the right direction." As Diane left, I found myself reflecting on how far I'd come. From the scared, uncertain woman who had fled her marriage with nothing but a suitcase, to the CEO of a successful company and the founder of a groundbreaking mentorship program. The journey hadn't been easy, but every step had been worth it. That evening, as I was preparing to leave the office, I received an email that made me pause. It was from Victor. For a moment, my finger hovered over the delete button, but curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. "Dear Clara," it read, "I heard about your Breaking Chains initiative. I just wanted to say, congratulations. What you're doing, it's important. I know our history is complicated, but I truly am proud of the woman you've become. You're changing lives, Clara. Never doubt that." I read the email twice, a mix of emotions washing over me. There was no bitterness, no anger, just a quiet acknowledgement of how far we'd both come. I clicked reply and typed a simple message. "Thank you, Victor. I hope you're finding your own path forward." As I sent the email, I felt the last remnants of my old life fall away. The chains that had once bound me to Victor, to self-doubt, to fear, were well and truly broken. I gathered my things and headed out of the office, nodding goodbye to the few employees still at their desks. As I stepped out into the cool evening air, I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of contentment wash over me. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah, drinks to celebrate the latest Breaking Chain success. I smiled and typed back, "Absolutely. Meet you at our usual spot in 20. As I walked to my car, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The pain, the struggles, the triumphs, they had all shaped me into the woman I was today. And that woman was someone I was proud to be. I wasn't naive enough to think the road ahead would always be smooth. There would be challenges, setbacks, moments of doubt, but I was ready for them. More than that, I was excited for them, because with each obstacle overcome, each fear conquered, I grew stronger. As I drove through the city streets, the lights of Chicago twinkling around me, I felt a surge of gratitude. Gratitude for the friends who had supported me, for the mentors who had guided me, and yes, even for the hardships that had strengthened me. The future stretched out before me, full of possibilities, and I was ready to embrace every single one of them, because I was Clara Walker, survivor, leader, mentor.